This week on Backyard Footy.
And for me, that's part of the mission, is to change that, because a lot of times agents have bad reps.
Mm-hmm.
They have bad reps. And it's like, oh, well, this agent just cares about the transfer commission and what they're going to make off of that. Or like you mentioned, how they'll get you a situation and then they'll ghost you. Meanwhile, I'm saying to myself, like, the client makes me in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So without that client, I'm not really doing my job, because that's my job.
Right.
My job is to make sure that the client is good. So if the client's not good, how can I thrive?
Right.
I can't make a move without a client. You know what I'm saying? Or I can't make a move without athletes. I can't make a move without those things. So it just doesn't make any sense to me when I come across situations like that with athletes.
Nah, I feel you. So why don't you tell everyone how you kind of got started in the industry? What made you want to help athletes strengthen their brand?
Oh, so helping the athletes strengthen their brand is something that I've just always been, involved in marketing, and always had a niche for it. Always been a huge sports fan, and decided to, go back to school for marketing. And I was like, okay, I want to start working with these guys and really helping them brand outside of their respective sport. And so from there, being able to get opportunities like working with recording artist 50 Cent and his boxing promotions company. So that was like my first start of, working with athletes. Oh man, connections. 50 and I actually come from the same neighborhood, but you would think that's gonna make it easier to get a position with him, but that definitely wasn't the case. Like, I literally had to do like some ring around the rosy, like hopefully he doesn't remember me type stuff. Just come in here like a random person. And at the time there was a position opening for an internship in the A&R department. And I applied for that, and I got the position. And when I started as that intern, I was always thinking of myself as that position. So from there, I ended up getting hired about a month later. And so ended up shifting gears from A&R to marketing. And, he was building his boxing promotions company. So he's like, I'm going to put you on this. You have the sports background. You're studying, sports management in grad school. So this would be perfect.
Wow. So you went on from him, and then you transitioned to the sports industry, right?
Fully, yes. Fully after.
What made you transition from the music to sports?
Yeah, so we left off at the part of the transition.
Right.
The transition wasn't hard because for years I was trying to get into sports. And what I learned from being in entertainment versus sports was that 95% of the sports industry was based off of who you knew. As opposed to in music, I was able to find my way. I had relationships, but I didn't use any of those contacts. So I was able to find my way. But in sports, it was like, you really needed to know someone. So I just always been the type, I never wanted to reach out to people and ask them, do me this favor. I'm looking for this job. I'm looking for this opportunity. So I then applied for a position at Madison Square Garden and got the position to be in their partnership group. So I was one of the only Black women, the only Black woman in a department of 120 sponsorship sales professionals. And what I was noticing was that I was finding myself in that position every time. So every time I would either apply for a job somewhere or an internship somewhere, I was always the only Black woman.
How'd that make you feel personally?
Personally, it was cool because I felt like, they gave me the opportunity, they gave me the chance, but I've always had it in the back of my mind that I wanted to either start that trend to create more opportunities so that there's more women of color that were able to come in after me. So
then you start at Madison Square Garden. how did you start making connections from there and climb up the ladder a little bit?
In terms of the sports side?
Yeah, in terms of the sports side.
So in sports, I had certain connections because the good thing about music and sports was that they go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
So certain people I knew that were working in music switched over to sports. Some people were at the NBA, some people were at agencies, some people were at leagues, and they were handling entertainment. So now people already knew me a lot just from music, and they knew I was that person that handles partnerships and sponsorships.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time I got to MSG and I was doing a couple of partnership deals, I was a person who always craved for more.
Mm-hmm.
I always needed more. I always needed a new challenge. And if I wasn't being challenged, either I was going to give myself more work or I was going to just go somewhere else to find that. And I knew I always wanted to do, things within music and sports and all of those things. So I left. I graduated. My mentor told me about an opportunity to work with his client who was an NFL first round draft pick. And he's like, this would be perfect for your company. It's just a great way to start out. So we ended up providing marketing services for Ezekiel Elliott, who was a first round pick in the 2015 draft. So it was awesome. It was amazing. Once in a lifetime opportunity.
Right.
And from there, I then received a position to work with the Tennis Association. So on their partnerships for the US Open, so provided consultation for their digital and strategy partnerships. So that was awesome. Got to work with like 14 different brands. Every brand from Heineken, Emirates, Time Warner, Chase. And I kind of had a relationship with Chase already because Chase was a main partner of Madison Square Garden. So that relationship was there and it kind of made it a little bit easier because then you know what you're getting into when you're dealing with the brand.
Right.
So
you would get in contact with them or they would get in contact with you to...
For the position?
Yeah, for the partnership and the events.
So what it was that someone who I had reached out to maybe 2 years prior, she just reached out to me on a whim, like send me an email like, hey, and this is before I even got into sports. I was just reaching out to people randomly, like, hey, if there's any opportunities. So she remembered me and she's like, are you still interested in doing something with the USTA? And I'm like, yeah, like I'm not gonna turn it down, And so she was like, well, I have the perfect position. I think you'd be great for it. And it's a consultant position and it's only for like 6 months. I said, listen, I'll take it because it was really about the experience. And through that experience was amazing. I got to meet Katrina Adams, who is the president of the USTA. She is also a Black woman. So she's super supportive of us minorities in sports and Black women in sports that want to make a difference and want to be an advocate for it. And so it's women like that I was like, man, this is amazing.
Right.
I was like, this is amazing.
Going.
Huh?
Inspires you to keep going.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
What's it like dealing with an artist in comparison to an athlete?
Almost the same. They both have egos. They both tend to be divas at times, but I think the athlete tends to be a little bit easier because, they kind of know what they're doing as far as their role, their, whatever it is they're doing on the field, whether it's football, whether it's soccer, they're on the pitch. But outside of that too, when it comes to like, let's say providing a branding deal or something like that,
mm-hmm.
It's not as difficult with an athlete as it would be with an artist because let's say if that brand is, I don't know. Well, for starters, like with athletes, you wouldn't want to put them with an alcohol company.
Right.
So you more so want to put them with like a beverage company.
Right.
So that partnership just looks a lot better than it would with an artist. Artists tend to change their mind a lot. Like you can book them for a show and they're supposed to be there and they decide I'm not going.
And that does.
And then, yeah. And as I'm sure you've read stories about promoters and artists being sued for either not showing up and, it's a lot as opposed to with an athlete. If it's like, hey, we're doing a signing, usually we can schedule that signing around a major event if it's If it's an NFL player, we can do it around Super Bowl. If it's a footballer, we can do that around World Cup, maybe in between, depending on what the rights are, you know? So yeah, I would say athletes definitely easier. Much easier. Much easier.
That's funny. Nah, that's interesting hearing your perspective.
Yeah, I've dealt with a lot when it comes to artists in terms of like booking shows and you know, I still do that now throughout the agency. We'll deal with talent, you know, whether it's an artist that they want to be booked to go to like Australia or they want to be booked to go to Dubai, and it's like a back and forth situation, as opposed to on the athlete side, it might be booking them for a partnership deal, which can still take about almost the same time, but the process is just so much better,
right,
than having to deal with, you know. Yeah.
So traveling the world, you know, you've been to the Women's World Cup, you've been to the FIFA award ceremony. How did you get involved with FIFA, first off, and what was that whole experience like for you?
Absolutely. So during my time with my last employer, which was Coca-Cola, I got the chance to work on the Men's World Cup and the Women's World Cup because FIFA was one of my accounts. And basically I was in the sponsorship department. And that was one of my accounts to handle, you know, activations. And it was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Just going and seeing it firsthand, and, you know, was super excited. And I was like, man, you know, deep down inside, that notion of wanting to become that agent kept popping up, where it's like, man, I don't see female agents. I don't see women, right? I don't see minority agents. Everyone that I was seeing didn't look like me. And the only time they look like me is when they were a player.
Right.
Even down to the staff. You know, and so I just kept saying, man, this is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it just kept pushing me to want to do it and want to become an agent even more.
Okay.
And so being a part of both of those experiences, the men and women, by far one of the best experiences that I've ever had in my life. It was like super, like just had so much fun. Such a blast. I recommend it to anyone. If you can ever get the chance to go to a World Cup, definitely go.
That's on my list too.
Yes, like, but it would be on your list to play in it, and you'll still experience it because it's like you're in it. Like, exactly. You know, it's just a different type of feeling. But it was just amazing.
Is that what kind of inspired you to start your own agency?
So at that time, I had already started it back in 2017, and I put it on hold once I went to Coca-Cola, because that was always a dream too, to work for one of the big global brands. Mm. And I put it on the back burner. And so 2019, towards the end of 2019, I decided to pick it back up and really focus on it. And so after leaving France for the Women's World Cup, the idea was like, okay, it's time to really, you know, do this the right way. And even during that time with the Women's World Cup, I was able to do some work through my agency.
All right. What do you plan on achieving with this agency?
Oh man, a CAA mixed with Walt Disney. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So if you take the model of how CAA is built with the business model of a Walt Disney, and you combine that. So the goal is maybe 5-10 years, the agency kind of just works for itself. Right. Not too many clients, right. Maybe 30 clients in total, maybe 50 in total, maybe 40 or 50 clients, ranging from obviously football and other sports leagues, music, talent, you know, brands. And it's a full service industry. So we provide marketing, we provide management, we provide obviously player representation, experiential events. So we do everything from event production to event curation. Sometimes even a brand, a client which could be a brand, will say they want to do an event, and they'll bring that to us and say, hey, execute this, take the idea, execute it. But it's like we can do everything in-house. Like if we have our footballer and he has an activation with, let's just say, a brand, Adidas, we work with Adidas to plan out that event and make sure it's fully executed. Or we work with Nike, whichever brand, just to make sure that it's being activated the right way. Because even though that client might have that boot deal, we're going to know our client better than the apparel brand would. So yeah, so I see it being, like that CAA Walt Disney, like, yeah, yep, a hand in almost everything, but the biggest, just disruptive, game changing.
Right.
So it's like when you hear that name, Trinity 3, it's going to make you think like, why that name? But you're also going to think like, wow, everything that was done through there was game changing. Mm-hmm. Even down to the clients, like the clients they sign, or the deals that are being done. It's different.
Mm-hmm. So why is it important for an athlete to have an agent?
Ooh, man, I had this conversation earlier. It is crucial because an agent is not just someone that negotiates your contracts, right? Like that agent is basically everything. They're everything to that athlete. So they're making sure your contract is good, it's negotiated, you have the right situation. They're making sure whether it's a boot deal or your marketing is handled. They're there if your family needs something. If it's 3 a.m. and you need someone to talk to, they kind of become your therapist. So they become like the therapist, the negotiator, the lawyer, the father or mother, the sister or brother. They're everything. Wow. And I think at times some athletes feel like, I don't ever knock an athlete to say, okay, I don't need an agent, because I feel like in certain circumstances, depending on the situation, depending on where you are in your career, you might not need an agent.
Right.
But I always say, don't ever feel like you can't reach out to one, even if it's just for advice.
Right.
Because a lot of times I'll get footballers that will come to me, or just athletes in general, that just need advice on what should I do? Like I don't want to sign with this particular agent, or I'm stuck in a contract that I didn't know what I was signing. Mm-hmm. And it's like, at the time, I didn't want that agent. I just thought I was signing a contract to play for a club. Mm-hmm. And in turn, it's signing with an agent that I'm stuck to. And then here I am. Or I'm not happy with this agent. This agent negotiated my contract and I haven't heard from him in like 6 months. So it's all of those things in one. I just like to say it's like being the glue.
Right.
Being the glue that holds that athlete together.
And from my experience, going off what you're saying, not every agency is like that. Not every agency looks out for their players to that extent. Like you were mentioning, most, especially in the soccer realm too, domestic players, they'll try to look for your little opportunity here and there. They can't find anything. They ghost you for a little bit. They might send you to an open tryout. Doesn't work out or something. It's just like, oh yeah, they'll leave you hanging or just leave you hopeful for nothing. And leave you around for a couple of years, but that's years that maybe you could have found a different agent. Maybe you could find one that actually, works for you behind the scenes and actually puts you in the forefront and has some kind of connection, because that goes a long way. And you just see
absolutely
that usually thrive the best.
Absolutely. And that's and it's and I feel bad. I really do feel bad. Some of the stories I've heard has just been terrible. And that's part of the mission for me, to change that.
Right.
To change that, because it's like, all it takes is one person, right? To start something, start that trend. And that's the goal for me, is to start that trend, and you'll find more females wanting to be agents. You'll find more minorities that want to be agents. And before you know it, we'll have several of LeBron James camp in soccer though.
No, that's something. Yeah, I've thought about myself too. Like,
You know what I mean? Like,
doing camps is not. I mean, it's not hard to do. I wouldn't say, but to promote it, put the money into it. Like, a top domestic player can easily have a so and so. Like, let's just use Josie Altidore for example. Altidore's Nike camp. Like, have it televised, or even if we can't get it televised, maybe like Fox News Channel, or just have some kind of media presence there where they're doing videos, putting it, marketing on IG, social media. That's all people and kids love. YouTube TV, put it on YouTube. Like, yeah, it would change the game. I think it's very important. It's needed.
There's a lot that's that needs to happen, and I mean, there's a good group. I mean, I've been blessed to come in contact with some great agents, a few that are minorities, and we all kind of share the same vision. So it's like a lot of conversations being had and just figuring out what can we do, you know, besides getting our players the right opportunities. Like, what can we do for our players even off the pitch? Because that's a key thing with me. I don't ever sign any player client that does not have some type of charity or like philanthropic side. Mm-hmm. Part of the hashtag that we run with at Trinity 3 is giving back and making an impact. And even if it's starting a small camp in the city that you play for, that's a small step, but it's a huge step.
Right.
It's a huge step because it shows the kids like, wow, I want to be like Hugh. Like, he's so dope. Like, he's not just a beast on the field, but like, look at what he's doing in the community. Mm-hmm. Or look at how he's going back to his hometown, and you know, he's sponsoring a kid to come out to Charlotte to watch him play for a couple of games or one or two games. It's things like that, because even though, you know, to some people it may not mean a lot, but it does.
Right, it does go a long way.
You know, it does. So
that's something I've wanted to know too myself. So that's good to know and good to hear. Because doing the camp, not even just here back home, just
yes,
for years and years to come. I mean, it's something I've thought about myself. So it's good to know.
I can't front. DMV has a lot of talent.
Oh yeah.
Not just basketball or like NFL, sport, like American football, but almost all sport.
Yeah.
Like most, because if you look at some of like the women's soccer players, I'm like, where you from? DMV. I'm like, oh wow. You know, so I'm like, man. But there are certain sports that, you know, obviously we know New York is number one at that. So
oh yeah.
You know, we already know.
Of course.
We already know.
So talk about your new podcast, Inside.
Yeah, so it's called The Inside Agents. So we are releasing our first episode May 15th. Super excited. So it's featuring myself and co-hosted by my good friend Nate Matthews, who's based out of Canada, and he's also an agent. He's a player agent as well, and has been in it a little bit longer than me. So he knows his stuff. But basically, we're bringing you the perspectives, two agent perspectives from two minorities. You know, he's sharing his struggles and what he has been through, of course, for me as a woman, as a Black woman. But then we're also touching all the topics. So everything from transfers, what it's like to play domestically in the US, in North America versus Europe, or what it's like to be a footballer in Africa that just wants that shot, and how, you know, not really being educated on things. You don't know whether or not you're going to be taken to Belgium because a scout comes and tells you, hey, I'm an agent, I'm going to take you here. And you really don't even know if that person's an agent.
Right.
You know, so informing them on the things that you don't get to see and what you don't get to, and just the inside of it, like the real inside of it. We're also going to be talking to some other agents from like the NFL, from Major League Baseball, NBA, and hearing their take on being a minority agent in the sport. And that way, it's almost like we can compare the two and see how maybe the NFL is a little bit more lenient to agents. I mean, I don't know if you noticed this, but this past NFL draft, the first 15 players that went in four of the top round players were all drafted by African American agents.
No, I didn't even know that myself.
So this is like the first year. At least I know I have some good friends, about maybe 3 or 4 of them, good friends of mine that are NFL agents, and it was amazing.
Wow.
But I'm sitting back saying, man, can I watch MLS draft and hear that?
Right.
That a top round pick is not only a minority kid, but his agent is Black. That's very rare. So it's even talking about things like that, right? Just talking about the process of going into the MLS draft versus, how do you get recruited in Europe? In a place like England, they don't even know what a draft means because they're like, wait, what's that?
Right.
We don't have that process. Those kids are 17 going straight to a Premier League club, getting like 125 euros a week.
Right.
So they don't know any of that. So there's just so much. I mean, of course, the transfer, the transfer window is so important. We'll be talking about women's football, especially because that's something that's dear to me, youth development, as you can see what's happening with like the federation here in America. They decided to cut the academy, but now MLS has started 95 academies, grassroots, but it's almost like, how is this going to work?
Right.
So it's so much behind that. Or even we'll be touching topics on the USL and all these different leagues and what's happening.
That's gonna be really good.
So it's gonna be crazy. I'm gonna say that it's gonna be crazy because we already have like our first 3 episodes that is gonna be it's gonna be interesting. And then of course, like I said, we're gonna have different guest speakers. So we'll be talking to different soccer coaches. We'll be talking to some of the recruits, like some of the coaches from the colleges, especially. So it's a lot.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. I mean, even just the perspective of, agents tricking domestic players to go overseas. A lot of my people got lost overseas. And that's one of my biggest fears and things. That's why I haven't even tried it myself, because I just know. Really, realistically, unless you're a teenager coming out of the system and a European team takes you, or unless you're in MLS balling, that's when they really look at, U.S. domestic players. But other than that, the odds, unless you have a very good agent, the odds of them actually taking an international player for the international roster spot is low, especially the way they look upon U.S. soccer. So there's a lot of my friends going over to these fake combines, these fake trials, and getting lost in there playing. I mean, fourth division Norway and Denmark is cool too, but it just happens a lot of times when they're just struggling out there, being away from home and stuff.
Can you imagine? Like,
come back and find a club.
I can't tell you how many people, there was one person in particular who left from my mom's country in Ghana and was left in, it wasn't even Belgium. It might have been Denmark or Norway. But like literally, I guess didn't have the best trial and was just flat out confused. No explanation. The same person that brought him there didn't really, just ghosted. So the whole system, everything is just like, wow. That's all I can say.
Right.
3-letter word, wow. It's like, and this happens? Right. And it's allowed to happen?
A decade. No. It's been going on for a while.
I always say, man, if there's one thing, they should have never let me in the doors, because there's gonna be a lot of changes with that. Because I'm like that mother type of figure, but I have that heart where it's like, man, I don't care what it is, like where's the integrity? Like where's your morals that you can actually take someone from a whole nother country and bring them somewhere else, only to then leave them because whatever it was that maybe you wanted didn't work out. Find another opportunity. That's what it is. You find an opportunity until it works. That's a part of the whole job, or not even job. That's just a part of it. That's what you're supposed to do.
Right.
So it's all of those things, and
that.
then some, and then some. Because honestly, I'm very big on education, and one thing I've noticed with sports and entertainment, that was something I always preached with everyone that I was working with. If you were an artist, and you're, at a height within your career, I'm like, okay, have you looked at the future? Have you looked at other things? So outside of your normal investments, have you explored areas like technology and how this is really going to change what we're doing? Have you invested in it? Same thing from an athlete perspective. If you're making all this money or whatever it is that you're doing, what is the other side looking like? Do we need to get a financial advisor to review all of this and make sure you're set up so that, that life after football is not, oh, I went from making $3 million a season to now watching my things get auctioned off in a storage because I can't afford to pay it.
Right.
So it's all of those things where it's like, it's more than just that. It's making sure you're educated, and it's not just about, okay, let me just negotiate this contract and then that's it. Let me get my money and I'm out. No, it's more than that.
I respect that. So where can people find you on IG and your agency on IG?
Sure. So for me, you can find me Maggie Ntim, Ntim like Mary. That's on IG. For the company page, it's Trinity 3 Agency. That's both Twitter and Instagram as well.
Nice.
And the website trinity3agency.com.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you coming again on the show. Much appreciated. I think this is
of course. Thank you.
And we'll definitely be in touch soon.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
No doubt. You have a good rest of your night.
Alrighty, you too.
See you again. Have a good one.
You too.
All right, bye.